Welcome to Parenting Differently, where we leave behind the old way of parenting and allow the gifts of parenthood to raise us. Different to perhaps how we were raised, different to how society is telling us to raise our kids, maybe just different to how we expected it would be, just different. I'm your host, Anya Simmons, so welcome. I am a mum of 2 young adults. I came to parenting as a British nanny and thought it would be easy, and I was very stunned that it wasn't and realized we were being raised together. I'm also a yoga teacher and author. I like to claim author now. My book coming out end of summer, Parent from This Place, How Yoga Changed the Way I Parented. So I'm super excited to share that book with you. And today my guest is the lovely Martin Parker. He is a speaker, an athlete, a dad, a Parkinson advocate. And to be honest, to me, when I've looked at your videos and your speeches, you're a genuine inspiration, as you share your journey, your stories. And I'm super excited to get to know you more, Martin. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for referring to me as lovely, too. I've never been referred to as lovely before.
Oh, there you go. We bring out the loveliness. I think you're lovely.
Okay, thank you.
So we dive right in. And so the first question I ask all my guests, so I'll ask for you in the fatherhood realm, is another way of saying, who are you and who are you fathering? And you can take that where you like.
I'm fathering one child who eventually will become an adult. As my mom would always say to me, hey, we're not parenting kids, we're parenting adults for the future.
Right.
And she always knew one day that they're going to grow up and leave the nest, so you had to prepare them for life. Mm-hmm. Sometimes she's not a hard woman, but she's a soft woman. She prepared me as softly as she could.
Okay.
Yeah, know that we still love her. She still loved me, of course. But yeah, that's what I always thought of my daughter. A grown up for the future, an adult for the future. And this is going to be somebody that we're going to be releasing into the world. So just seeing her grow up and seeing the changes that she goes through, I never get sad. I just like to see that when she meets challenges and does things like that. A lot of parents like to get sad when they graduate or go on to
as they grow up,
goals and levels in life. But I get happy. I get excited about it because I know she's progressing and she's getting older. So
excellent.
That's the type of father I like to be.
Right. I like that. I like the idea that we're parenting for the future because I totally believe that that's the catalyst of change, that the decisions you make now affect that.
Absolutely. Every decision I've made, good or bad, has affected my life. So why wouldn't it be the same for her?
Yeah.
Or somebody else's life, right?
Right. Absolutely. So going into your how you were parented, how do you feel about how you were raised? Like, how did that? What was the great stuff that you really wanted then to include with your daughter, and what was the stuff that you're like, I'm not doing it that way?
The stuff that I really liked was my family was together, always together.
Okay.
It was a family of 5. I have a brother and a sister. My mom and dad. It was a traditional family. Mm-hmm. It was a traditional Christian family. We all made sure we sat down for dinner together. Which, when you're a kid, you didn't, becoming a teenager and all that stuff, and you're fighting for independence, you don't really understand it.
Right.
But then as you become an adult, you learn to value that, the togetherness of the family. And it runs through everything. You can see my sister and her 3 boys and my brother and his daughter. They like to spend a lot of time together. Nice. We value family, and, you go on the family hikes, you have family dinners. Mm-hmm. Birthdays are always a big deal. Thanksgiving, holidays, you
right.
Always make sure you see each other. We always make sure that when we leave, we always make sure that we know that we tell each other we love each other and
fantastic.
And all that stuff. We always make sure that we know how each other feels. before we leave, because we know that might be it's not a great feeling, but sometimes it might be the last time that we see each other.
Right.
And we just want them to make sure, you never want to leave that question in somebody's head. Did he love me, or did he know that I loved him, or anything like that? One thing that I think I would have, for myself especially, I think I would have got away from religion a little bit. Not because the values of some of the religion is good, but some of the imagery and stuff about eternity and things like that was really tough for me to understand as a kid.
Right.
Like the eternal punishment and stuff like that. And some of the old Bible stories are pretty graphic, and I don't think they realized back then some of the lessons they were teaching might have really scared kids and confused them. And I know I was one of those kids. Took me a while to be, I'd wake up in the middle of the night scared and things like that.
Wow, yeah, so it was traumatic.
Yeah. So every Sunday and stuff like that, I'd be worried about death and where I was going, and maybe like stories of Noah's Ark and stuff with the world flood and stuff like that. Yeah. All these stories that kids would think about, and you'd see in a movie, it was fake, but I really overthought these things as a kid. So I don't know if that was anybody's fault. I know that was something that's been taught for years and years and years and years.
Still is, yeah.
And everybody accepted it as truth. But nowadays, it just seems like sometimes it's a little more damaging, some of the stories.
Right. Yeah.
Wake up.
I appreciate you saying that, because I really relate with, we're not religious in this unit of my family, like my husband, my kids, but my husband's family are. And so when I would take my kids to a Catholic church, they were petrified about the big Jesus on a cross up there, and why, and he looks real in the one, and it was, and they didn't grow up with it, so we could discuss it differently, I think, than if you see that every week, that it's, and I think different kids, sensitive kids, you pick it up differently, where some maybe just think, let's just go up there and never really look at him, and others, so that's a good point. Right, depending
Absolutely.
on the child.
I think there's a lot of good lessons, and a lot of good religions. A lot of religions have a lot of good lessons and values to offer, but some of the stories are sometimes very damaging. And some of the punishments are very final.
Oh, yeah, and the fact that you remember worrying about these things.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? Would create anxiety, would create fear of life, because you're so concerned about, rightly
Absolutely.
so. Yeah, but I love what you said about you as a family, that you loved the part that you all got together, and that you say always, I love you, and being together is important. I mean, that's really good. That's a real tight-knit family unit, that I love that you can say it, and that you value being together. And I think that, your kids, your nieces and nephews, everybody gains from that, right? You almost have like your own little village raising each of the kids. And so I know from my husband, who grew up with a bigger family than I did, aunts and uncles around really helped create, each one had something different to bring, right? Each one had something that, to go to this one because they really love hearing your stories about this, or this one because they like to see all the pictures you created. It doesn't have to just be a one-person unit. That's awesome.
Well, that's the thing. Back when we were kids, we were all born in BC, British Columbia, and we came to Ontario when we were 4. Well, I was 4. I'm the oldest of 3. And my dad had to come to Ontario by himself and find a job, because he's an electrician by trade, and he wasn't able to find work out there. Well, he was able to find work, but it was just work that was away all the time, like in logging camps and stuff. And he was missing his kids growing up, and he decided that have a better life, a better family life, he'd move right to Ontario and find something that was more stable. So when we all got here, it was a family of 5, but it was just us. We'd see relatives and maybe grandparents like every 2 or 3 years when people could afford to see each other and save up for a plane ride and things like that. So when we got here, it was just us. And we only had us to depend on. So I think that made us closer and independent.
Yeah.
So when we all started to get married and things like that and had other families to go to, it was really confusing because it was just us and nobody else would come. But like when you started to get serious girlfriends and stuff, they were like, what do you mean you got to go to this person's house on Christmas?
It's just our Christmas, our Thanksgiving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was an adjustment. But yeah, that's the way we grew up. We depended on us and we only had us. And so we kind of became close and we, like you said, a little gang, like a little.
Yeah.
We always had each other's back. That's the way it is now. Even though we're separate and we all have our little villages, we still all come together and still have the same values. So.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah. That's great. So, Martin, what do you think is, in raising your 10-year-old, what do you think is the biggest lesson she's teaching you as a father?
Well, not to give away my speech for next week, but... Oh,
of course. Okay, actually, you can, because this will happen afterwards, so you can go for it.
Oh, perfect. What had happened is one day, I do a lot of exercising and stuff. I don't know, just a little precursor. I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease at 32. And my daughter was born in 2011. I was diagnosed in 2013. So I actually did have it. The startings of it, my left arm started to stiffen up and stuff like that. Well, I remember being my ex-wife being in labor, and my left arm was acting a little funny. I didn't know why. So after she was born and all this stuff, after she was born and 2 years later, I was diagnosed with that left arm was diagnosed as Parkinson's disease and it's progressive neurological disease, as you know. And so I was always kind of angry that I wouldn't be able to father. I knew eventually I would have to stop working, and I was kind of angry that I wasn't going to be able to father normally or
how you expected.
My daughter, and my daughter wouldn't have a normal upbringing, as have a regular father, regular hardworking father that doesn't shake and can do all the stuff a regular guy can do. So I was exercising and stuff, and I'm in better shape than I was back before I was diagnosed, which is funny. But sometimes when my meds are off, it's treated with medication. Sometimes when my meds are off, I'm just this weak, frail guy who can barely lift a tea to his mouth. And we still do every once in a while, but we used to have a nightly sleep time tea. And it would be a relaxing time when we could talk. And there was one time when I could barely lift my tea to my mouth. And I asked her point blank, it was 9 years ago, she was 9, so it was about a year ago.
Yeah.
So I said, what's it like having a dad who, can do push-ups and bench press over 200 pounds and things like that, but then at night, sometimes you can't even lift the tea to my face. And she said, are you kidding me? She goes, you're a great dad. She said, you come to all my school things, you take me to the zoo, take me to Kansas Wonderland, which is an amusement park here. You take me swimming, you spend all your time with me. A lot of dads have to work all the time, but because of Parkinson's, you're able to do all this stuff. So I'm happy that I'm blessed that I have a dad with Parkinson's. Wow. And my eyes lit up, and I said, "Wow, my 8-year-old just schooled me on a whole different perspective." She just had this whole. She looked at it as
a blessing, almost.
A blessing, yeah. So at that point, I started thinking that Parkinson's making me a better father than I would have been. Because if I would have had to be working all the time, And I probably would have taken a lot of those little moments for granted and would have said, oh, we can wait till tomorrow because I'll be feeling good. But with Parkinson's, I basically live my life on 2-hour intervals. I got to take pills every 2 hours. And I don't know how it's going to be. And I have to maintain it. So a lot of the times when I'm feeling good, I just say, let's go. Let's do this thing while I'm feeling good. So I don't take a lot of things for granted. So I think that's made me a better father. And this is probably a little bit of what she's talking about. And made me think of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes she gets a little fed up with it. Now she's 10 and she's getting in that teenager part. And she's like, I just want to stay in and talk to my friends. But let's get out there and go for a walk. Let's go do this. Let's go for a hike.
Right, but that would be all kids. Anything you change them from, right? They're a bit more like.
Exactly.
But I think it's similar to what you say, like what you were mentioning before about how family meals and things were so important, but you didn't realize the importance of it. And so she's really reflecting back to you, wow, the importance of, like, even if you drag her out for a hike, even if you're like, well, we can do something right now. I'm ready. I'm feeling good. She's going to she already mentioned she is, but appreciate those things later on too. Right?
Exactly.
Those are life skills. And that someone's really listening to you and is present to you. You don't need to do that all the time. None of us do. And so she can have that with you on the time, every 2-hour intervals. That's freaking amazing. She gets it's like a clock to sort of reassess and where are we at right now. I think that part is fantastic.
Well, she doesn't know any different. Her dad's always had Parkinson's. Like I said, I was diagnosed when she was 2, so I've always been this way. She doesn't know any different, and I think she recognizes when I'm not feeling good. She sees when I'm a little more shaky than I should be, or maybe I'm having a little trouble walking, things like that, and she lets me rest. And like sometimes I can't even play video games with her, and I'll tell her. She'll ask me to play Lego DC Villains is her favorite game.
Okay.
She'll ask me to play it, and I'll just say I can't do it right now, but like let me get my meds in me, and then when my hands start working properly again, of course you can play. But right now there's just be no point. I'd be dying every 2 minutes.
You're like, I'm not going to give in to you that easy. You don't get to win that quickly.
So yeah, we have a lot of fun. I get to hang out with her.
Right.
So.
Excellent. Now, how do you, when you mess up, which I'm assuming you do at times, I'll do, when you mess up, like you've got angry, you've shouted, or you've been impatient, or all the millions of emotions that we have, I'm curious as to how you repair first with yourself from feeling guilty and shameful, like all us, I think individuals, but parents too, when you think, that wasn't fair, that wasn't nice. And then how do you repair with her? Like, how comfortable are you then to repair with her? Do you have these moments?
That's another silver lining to a dark cloud in my life. I'm also a recovering addict. When I was diagnosed with Parkinson's, I've had substance abuse issues all my life.
Okay.
When I started drinking when I was 13, but I wasn't an everyday drinker. So another silver lining to a dark cloud in my life is when I was diagnosed with Parkinson's, I started self-medicating with alcohol.
Okay.
I didn't drink it every day, but when I didn't have access to my daughter at that time because my marriage fell apart.
Okay.
I would drink, and actually, I shouldn't just say that. I only started drinking. I said my marriage fell apart because I was coping with alcohol more than I should have.
Okay.
I didn't drink every day, but it's how I cope. My marriage fell apart, and we split. And finally, I realized after a big event in my life, I realized that I had to get sober, and I used a 12-step program to do that. And I realized that I started abusing alcohol when I was 13.
Whoa.
And
Yes,
like I
yeah.
said, I didn't drink every day, but it's basically the theory is you stop maturing when you started abusing alcohol, when you started drinking.
Oh,
So that's how you grew up. And so a big part of the 12-step program and part of these 12 steps is to begin to mature from where you left off, which sometimes takes a little longer.
that's interesting. I'm not sure I was aware of that.
Yeah. Well, it was told to me before. She said, "Oh, you started drinking when you were 13." And I said, "Yeah, I used to go party and all that stuff." And she told me that that's how I learned to socialize. Because, and that's
It
because
does
I
make
was
sense.
always,
Yeah.
yeah. That's where I picked up all my social habits when you're 13. That's how you learn to cope, and how you get your camaraderie, and you go drinking every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you make friends and relationships. So anyways, this 12-step program, one of the things they preach is constant character maintenance, and
Okay.
and making sure you have character faults. So I got really used to apologizing right away, and recognizing when I get angry and when I lose my temper. And it's also made me more patient, but there's been more than a few times where I've screamed, and I've maybe snapped back, and I've had to apologize right away. And she recognizes that, and she appreciates it.
Oh, yeah.
She said, I get mad, and then I don't want to make sure there's no silence. I don't want her to grow any resentment toward me growing up, thinking that I was always right. So if I recognize something is wrong, which I usually am, there's always a better way to deal with it than yelling and screaming.
Yeah.
You got to communicate rather than tell people in that manner. So I'll apologize to her, and I'll say almost right away, I'll say, "That wasn't right. I'm sorry. This is what I wanted from you. This is what I needed you to do.
Right.
And I should have told you in this way. And I love you. And I'll always love you."
Yeah, that is beautiful repairing, and also I'm amazed like that you can go there right away. Like I'm usually, if I've lost it, many a time I have, and I didn't have an abuse issue, but mine I had anger, a lot of anger, and or something would just really trigger something that I didn't know I still needed to deal with, right? So it would take me some time to be able to then get my head around, okay, I'm sorry. I had no problem saying I'm sorry, but I couldn't get to it as quick as you could. So that's awesome.
Well, it's a lot of, Parkinson's is a lack of dopamine in your system. And it doesn't only affect movement, it affects mood and patience and frustration and all that stuff. So sometimes I can really escalate really quickly.
Right.
And without catching it. And then after almost like 10 seconds after, I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that really didn't warrant that type of reaction."
Yeah.
I mean, she was asking for a glass of water at the wrong time. And sometimes there's these times where I'm struggling and I'm holding something and she just loves it. And I can't get mad at her. But she comes and gives me a hug. And sometimes I almost drop something and I can't get mad at her for giving me a hug. So I got to say, "Hold on, sweetie, let me put that," and I just give her a hug. I tell her I love her.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of times where there's outside. I don't have to work right now. I don't have a lot of the outside stresses of what a lot of people are dealing with. And I think a lot of times we as adults and parents, we snap at things that have happened to us throughout the day. And maybe our kids just talk to us at the wrong time and they get the outlash of what had happened to us 4 hours earlier, that we couldn't yell at our boss. So we're going to yell at our kids, or we couldn't yell at that guy on the street for cutting us off in line at Tim Hortons or getting a coffee. So we're going to yell at our kids, but we don't realize that. And I think the sooner you realize who you're yelling at, I think it would just be better if we learn to apologize to our kids sometimes for reacting to what has happened to us earlier in the day and explain to them. And maybe if you explain to them, this is what happened to me today and it's not about you.
I think that's the key. That's the key. It's not about you. Because as we know, you know, growing up, my parents divorced when I was about 6. You know, there's this piece in me still that would relate to, it must be my fault, right? Or if there was an argument or if anything around me happened, I would instantly think, what did I do wrong? Even if I had nothing to do with it, I carried that. You know, so I think that is the key. And I think it's being authentic about it, right? Like you can just go, oh, sorry. And you've done it again and again and you keep messing up. That sorry is going to get tiring, right? Nobody's going to believe you. Whereas if you, like you said, I think it's great to explain why, but it's also, you know, hey, this is my stuff, not your stuff, right?
Right. Yeah, you can apologize all you want, but if you don't change your behavior, like I said, nobody's going to believe you. Mm-hmm. They're going to apologize till you're blue in the face. And people are just going to think it's, well, not crocodile tears.
But, well, I think it's also, even if you see that someone is trying, they don't have to, no one's going to be perfect, right? Like,
right.
But if you can see someone is genuinely trying to change a behavior or make a difference or do the work for themselves, like work on themselves as to why did that make me so angry, or why did you've got a lot more on your plate there for reasons why you would maybe get angry, like you said with Parkinson's, like you actually have a low rate of dopamine, did you say?
Yeah.
Right, like so that's actually within you, that's not a mental thing, that's actually what your body is dealing with.
Exactly.
Right. So, but then her knowing that you take the time out and that you're resting and that you're honoring who you are, I think that's really wonderful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you think has been the hardest part of parenting for you?
The hardest part of parenting is just generally, like I see a lot of myself in my daughter.
Okay.
When I was growing up, and not that I didn't like who I was. I didn't really like how I treated other people sometimes, and sometimes. No, I shouldn't say sometimes I treat other people. I see it in attitude towards schoolwork and things like that. Like She doesn't like school. I don't like school. I've never liked school, and I understand that. But it's things that have to be done. And I remember thinking when I was a kid that I had all the time in the world. None of this stuff matters, and all that stuff. And through COVID and stuff like that, a lot of these kids have a chance to goof off and stuff with the remote learning and things like that. And it really just seems like nowadays it really doesn't matter because they're remote learning and things like that. And I know when I was a kid, I would have took full advantage of that. So with my daughter, I really got to stay on top of her, and I really got to make sure she's paying attention and got to constantly go by in her room, and cause I don't want to be on top of her like she's not under surveillance, but to make sure you got to check in on her, like, what are you doing? And sometimes I'll see her go under her desk and she'll bring her toys, she'll have her toys out, or she'll be playing with something, and I'll say, you need to pay attention. But that's the hardest part. Like, you don't, because I didn't listen when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm. So you relate.
She's not going to listen to me. They're not going to understand. But that's the hardest part. I think the hardest part would be to let them make their own mistakes, because you know they're not going to listen. And I know I harbored a lot of resentments and things when people told me what to do. And as soon as they tried to tell me what to do, my eyes would just roll.
Right. Yeah, I relate.
Yeah. And I'm starting to see that with her. I mean, she's a nice person. She's a genuine person. She's very kind, very loving. She looks after everybody. But it's just when it comes to schoolwork and things like that, it's just, it's going to be a little harder for her because she's going to, she doesn't think it's as important.
Right.
She values other things. And I hope she continues with these things because she's into falconry and she's into archery. She's into a lot of these things. And I know if she continues with a lot of these things, she's going to be happy. But I never want to be the guy that says, you got to stick with math. You got to stick with
Right.
all these things because this is where you're going to make your money and you're going to be a job. But those are her dreams. So right now anyway. So if she's going to, So that's the hardest part of parenting for me, trying to figure out, that there's an easier path and there's a harder path. And when you see your kid on the harder path, but she's got to take it, that's the hardest part for me.
Yeah. It's that leaning back, right? Letting it just be, this is their journey. That is hard. That is super hard.
Yeah. Because you said, oh, she's only 10, she can't make those decisions. And you kind of say, yeah, but she's not. If you tell her what to do and you force her to do something, she's not going to like it anyway.
And what are the lessons there? What does she learn from that, right?
Yeah. But once she sees the reward for her work, once she sees if she gets the results of her work and she enjoys it, that's the best part. But to see her make those mistakes and see her stumble and see her, that's going to be the hardest part. And it still is the hardest part.
Yeah.
Even when she was a kid, you watch her fall, but you want to scoop her up and you want to.
Yeah, you want to make life smooth and easy for them, don't you?
Like when I've been taking her swimming since she's been one, and ever since the time they said, oh, just put her under the water and scoop her, and there's a air bubble in front of her face, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. Once you did it, you kind of let her go a little bit, and you realize she's underwater, and you bring her up, and she realizes she's okay, and then she just smiles, wants to do it again. I mean, it's hard to scoop them underwater, but to bring them up and smile and see that everything's okay, that was the hardest.
That's actually an awesome metaphor, isn't it, in a way, for parenting?
Yeah. You just got to let them go and kind of catch them and guide them and
and live your best life, right? That's what they're watching.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I got to lead. That's what I say. I got to try lead by example.
Yeah.
I don't want her to see me give up.
No, she's seeing a really strong dad is what she's definitely seeing,
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, so for my last question,
sure.
If you think back to when you first held your daughter, the 10 years ago, as a father, a new father, what advice do you wish you knew then that you know now on fathering or on parenting? What would you tell that young Martin?
What would I tell that young Martin? That's a good question. I mean, I after the story I told you today earlier about her being glad I had Parkinson's, I don't really know. I wouldn't say I'm a perfect father, but I guess I would just say well, enjoy every little bit of it. Make sure, and I have been doing it, but just enjoy the little parts. I remember as she's getting older and she doesn't want to hang out with me quite as much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to have any regrets about it because I can let it go because I put in, I feel I put in enough effort to make sure that I didn't let any of those little times go by that I didn't let any of those little times go by that I wish I would have done it. I don't have to miss when she was a little kid. I remember I remember the gym, and before COVID, there's a young father, and he brought in his young daughter. He was like 2 or 3. This was a couple of years ago, so my daughter was already 8, 7, and she was past that 2 or 3 year old stage. And I looked at him getting her dressed and all that stuff in the change room and stuff. Because normally they're in the family change room, but for some reason he had brought her in the men's change room because the pool and the gym are interchangeable.
Okay.
So for some reason he was in there and she had her little bathing suit on, her little bathing cap and all that stuff. And I thought, oh, how cute. And I remember a lot of people would say they missed that, or they were sad that that's over. But I don't have to feel sad and I don't have to feel bad because I went through that. I did that with her. I took her to those things. I didn't miss those times. I took advantage of all the time that I had. I took those opportunities to take her swimming and teach her the things that I think she should know. And there's always this joke that there was this story that we had when we were we were getting changed together when she was really young. And she said, "Oh, Dad, you and your silly penis." And it was a family changer. So we had our own little private thing, and there's no other way about it. I'd always try to turn around or something like that. But
sure, yeah.
but she knew the word penis at that time. So she goes, "Dad, you and your silly penis." And all you hear is like 4 dads across 4 like private stalls just snicker and laugh, right? And some of the moms in the room are like, "Ah."
Yeah.
And and she kind of said, "What's up? Why are they laughing?" I said, "They're laughing at you because you openly..."
Yeah. Told everybody what you were looking at.
Yeah. So that's a funny story that we always go back to. And she goes, "Hey, Dad, remember that time?" I said, "Yeah, I remember that time." So
I love it.
yeah,
I love that, your outlook. I really do, Martin. I really think there's a lot all of us can learn from this outlook of, like when you say, I don't need to be sad about those things because I was there, because I experienced them, and I can leave them where they were and move forward. And you're able to really create these memories with your daughter and time with her. It's already there. So now it is that point, isn't it, of kind of lean back, a little bit of guiding, a little bit of helping, but really she's got it. She's got it. You know, that you guys have done a great job.
I've tried. The other day I was teaching her how to make pancakes. Because she always says, I always say, what do you want for breakfast on Saturday or Sunday? And say, "I want pancakes." And she's just laying there in her bed. And I said, "Okay, well, you're going to come help me make pancakes now." And she kind of looked at me and said, "What?"
You bring them to me, sir.
And I said, "Yeah." So I brought her down and I taught her how to mix the batter and use the 1/3 cup to dump it in the pan and then wait for the bubbles to bubble and all that stuff. And then you flip it, and she had a great time. So it's just one more thing that she's learning to do without me. But that's another one of those moments that I'm going to have to hold on to. I taught her that.
Yeah.
Those are one of the, like my mom was saying from the beginning, we're not raising kids, we're raising adults.
Yeah.
And one of these days they're going to go out and do adult things. And you got to make sure they do those adult things. You can't be sad about it. because that's what you raised them to do.
Right.
You got to be proud of it, right? So.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for being here, Martin, and for sharing your real journey of fatherhood. That's what we want to hear about, right? And the choices you've made to do it differently. So for viewers and listeners, please subscribe, and we will have all of Martin's details in the comments below so that you are able to track him down and follow his wonderful journey in being this Parkinson advocate and being an incredible father. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. Great time.